Hey guys, I'm Tom the Tech Chap, and this is my new PS5 setup, which includes a PS5, makes sense. But more importantly, I also have these. The new Sony INZONE M9 4K 144Hz gaming monitor, and also a pair of these, the new InZone H9 Headphones. Now, despite the obvious design similarities, the fact that it says perfect for PlayStation 5 on the website, and also a couple of exclusive features, these aren't officially PlayStation branded, and they're not just designed for the PS5. If I zoom out a little bit, you can see I've got my PC, my PS5, and my Series X all connected up to this at the same time because we've got two HDMI 2.1s and a display port, which I've got connected to the PC, and there's a USB-C, which acts as a second display port or an alternate display port, if you like. So yes, this looks like a PS5 monitor, it's made by Sony, but really it is meant just as a gaming monitor. And even the H9 headphones have this dongle with a console or PC slider. Well, it says PS5, but you didn't really expect Sony to write Xbox on this. So it's suitable for any gaming setup, but is the M9 actually any good? Because for $900, or somewhat frustratingly £1,000, it's certainly not cheap, and there are other options. Well, beyond the 4K 144Hz headline, there's quite a lot going on with this. It's an IPS panel with an anti-glare matte coating. It's certified Display HDR 600. We get 96 local dimming zones for better contrast. It's G-Sync compatible, which means it works with both NVIDIA and AMD graphics cards if you've got this hooked up to your PC. We've got HDMI 2.1, we have VRR support, and also just 1 millisecond response times. So yes, you will get the full-fat, delicious 4K 120 support out of this with your consoles, with your PS5 or your Series X. And of course, via DisplayPort, you're gonna get that 4K 144 on PC as well. But the problem is there are quite a few other options out there that give you similar specs, including the LG UltraGear 27GP950, you've got the Eve Spectrum, the Dove Spectrum, they changed their name, including the new glossy one, which actually I need to do a review on. And most of them, particularly that LG, are a fair bit cheaper. And actually, with this particular sale, it's 40% less than the InZone M9. So what makes this stand out and worth paying a few £100 extra for? Well, there's a couple of things. Let's start with picture quality, and a big selling point here is that we get 96 direct LED dimming zones. That's compared to just 16 edge-lit dimming zones on that LG. It is still an IPS display, and we're looking at around 1000:1 contrast in SDR and about 3000:1 in HDR. So nothing like OLED, mini LED, or even VA levels of contrast, but those extra dimming zones effectively improve the contrast ratio because unlike a more basic edge-lit screen or one with fewer zones, we get more precise lighting, less blooming, and also helps minimize IPS glow and backlight bleed. It is still there. I mean, a bright menu bar, or if you bring up the OSD over a dark background, it'll definitely show some blooming, but in real-world use, those extra zones really do make a difference. Especially in games like Stray or Resident Evil, anything with lots of shadows or darker environments. Or actually, even just the black bars and the letterboxing you get around movies. Now, while I mentioned this is not a PlayStation monitor, there are actually a couple of exclusive features that you do get with the PS5, which kind of makes it the ultimate PS5 monitor. It's all behind the scenes stuff that you don't really have to worry about, but we're getting auto HDR tone mapping and also auto picture mode, so you're going to get the best HDR and picture settings based on what you're watching or playing. Although when you first connect the M9 to your PS5, you'll go through the HDR setup process. I had to make a couple of minor adjustments, although that could just be a subjective change, but then I was good to go. So the M9 supports the HDR10 Plus standard, which is pretty normal for a monitor. No Dolby Vision or anything like that, unfortunately, but it's not a TV, so that's quite rare. But this is also certified for the Display HDR 600 standard, which means we should expect at least 600 nits of peak HDR brightness. Well, in practice, I measured around 720 nits in HDR and about 400 in SDR, which is definitely above average for a monitor, although good TVs or VA or mini LED monitors can often get significantly brighter. Also, while it's rare you'd have a fully white screen like this, you can see the brightness drops off around the edges. We don't have fantastic screen uniformity. However, if you pair that solid HDR brightness with the precise tone mapping and also the local dimming zones, this thing looks incredible, and you can make out more detail in darker areas, and bright lights really pop. And it's surprisingly color accurate for a gaming monitor under $1,000, although make sure to change the default picture preset to standard for the best results. Also, input lag in the fast mode, which is what I'd recommend using, is around 4 milliseconds, which is very fast, which means this is a good option if you play lots of twitchy shooters or competitive multiplayer games. Now, speaking of cool tech, this video is sponsored by the Blink Video Doorbell. I've got mine set up by my front door with this beautiful view of a field and a skip. What a beautiful day. It's a 1080p live view, and also we can have a two-way conversation, so you can tell your delivery driver to pop your parcel over there, or tell your wife that she can't come in unless she gets the password right. What's the password?
Tech chat is the best chat.
You may enter. We also get motion detection, Blink app alerts, and it works with Alexa-enabled devices. The first thing you're going to want to do though is download the Blink app. From here you have access to all your device feeds, settings, you can update the software. Now it only took me about 5 minutes to mount it, and you can install it wired or wired free with 2 AA batteries, and depending on your settings, the battery life can last up to 2 years. And it only costs $49.99 here in the UK, although the optional Sync Module 2 costs around £30, or you can get them both together for around $80. And the Sync Module lets you store video clips locally, so not just in the cloud, and for up to 10 devices. So for convenience, keeping an eye out, particularly with motion detection, definitely check out the Blink Video Doorbell, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Okay, so far so good, but I do have a couple of issues with this. Firstly, the design, and where are my swappable stand plates so I can match this with my cosmic red PS5 setup? Wouldn't that be cool though, if you could swap these out for the same matching color as your PS5 and your controller? Just a thought. Okay, in all seriousness, it's definitely a unique looking monitor. We get nice thin bezels around 3 edges, although a bit of a chunkier plastic chin at the bottom, but it's this 3-legged stand that really stands out. Sorry. It does have the advantage of not sticking too far out the back, but the problem is it seriously limits the monitor's flexibility. I mean, we get a little bit of tilt and height adjustability, but it's not much, and you can't rotate or even pivot the screen without, well, moving the whole thing. And do not get me started on the speakers. I don't think I've heard anything as bad as the speakers on this. It's the tinniest piece of absolute rubbish that I've ever heard. I would go as far as to say they are unusably bad, which is a shame, although maybe that's their way of encouraging you to pick up a pair of these or these. Round the back, the white PlayStation / iRobot theme continues, and we get this nifty light strip with 13 colors that can illuminate the wall behind it, although I do wish it could get a bit brighter. If you're thinking, Tom, that looks incredibly bright, I love that backsplash of color, well, it's because I've got one of these behind it. Actually, even if you ignore the light strip behind the desk, you really can't see anything from the light, it's just not bright enough. Connectivity is excellent though. It's got everything you need for 2 consoles, a PC and a laptop at the same time. There's also a power button and a handy joystick for controlling the menus, which are nicely laid out and gives you lots of options to adjust picture modes, the dimming levels, crosshair overlays and black equalizers, proper gaming features. Although I would have liked to have seen a low blue light mode, but then again the M9 can get seriously dim at just 10 nits if you want. The M9 also has a KVM switch, so you can actually control 2 PCs with the same keyboard, mouse, and headset that's connected to the monitor's USB ports. Okay, before I wrap up, let's talk about these. And I will admit that I am not an audiophile, and actually I'm not really much of an expert at headphones either, so I will leave a couple of my favorite reviews linked below. But so far, I think these are fantastic. Although I must admit, my first thought was, why do we need these when we already have these, the Pulse 3D headsets? Well, mainly because these are better, but as you'd expect, for 2.5 times the price at about £270 or $300. But they do work well with any console or PC. They're also very comfortable, although my ears did start to get quite warm after about half an hour. I think they look good, understated, premium, but most importantly, they sound great. We get spatial sound with the PS5's Tempest 3D support, we get great battery life, the microphone sounds good, if not perhaps the best I've ever used, they charge via USB-C, and you can connect via Bluetooth and 2.4 GHz with this little dongle at the same time, like your console and PC. Downsides? Well, there's no wide connection option, and it is quite pricey. Perhaps the cheaper H7s are also worth a look. So is this the perfect PS5 monitor? Well, kind of. I mean, this whole setup, the PS5, the M9, the H9, all in will cost you like £1,720. That is a lot of money, and I would seriously consider checking out the M9's competition, because certainly the M9 is not perfect. I don't love the stand, the speakers are terrible, and there is still some blooming, And also, I still think that 27 inches is just a bit too small to really appreciate 4K. For me, I reckon 32 inches is the sweet spot. But the combination of 4K 144Hz, VRR, G-Sync, HDMI 2.1, the 96 dimming zones, which you don't find very often, if at ever really at this point, under $1,000, the HDR tone mapping and the auto picture mode if you've got your PS5, and also some pretty decent HDR brightness. As a whole, if you want a high-end 27-inch 4K gaming monitor, you're not going to be disappointed. It is a terrific monitor. But what do you reckon? Is this the best thing since sliced bread, or do you think it is a little bit overpriced for what you're getting? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you want to see more of my reviews, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below, and I'll catch you next time right here on the Tech Chat.